Well, hello. How's it going, y'all? Hey, tonight it's a little different. I invited somebody on to do an interview with me, and I've got my brother here, Zach Lewis, here. Now, for those of you that don't know Zach, I'm really excited for you to get an opportunity to connect with somebody else who has been laboring in the kingdom in a very powerful and effective way for a lot of y'all in a way that maybe you are not as familiar with. And yet at the same time, there's lots of people out there that consume all kinds of various content, and there's a lot of producers of that content, but by and far, there's a lot more consumers. But Zach is someone who has taken it upon himself and taken he's taken some initiative to be able to provide for people a way of learning and growing and maturing in all kinds of various different topics over the years. And he's done that in some powerful and profound ways. So I just wanted to be able to get him on here to share some of his story and share his testimony about how he got to where he is today. Because like most of you, we all didn't start out this way, but slowly but surely those scales of deceit came crawling off of our eyes. And I want Zach to be able to share with us. Zach, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
No problem, brother. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for letting me on.
Absolutely, man. I'm really glad you're here, Zach. And if you would, Zach, would you just share with us kind of, I'm guessing you didn't start out fully aware of the truth and the deceptions that were out there in the world. Is that right?
No, I grew up just like everyone else, totally deceived and indoctrinated.
And where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I still currently live to this day. And most of my life, I had a very rough upbringing. My mother and my father were both into drugs, which pretty much was um, it was because of generational curses, which I believe was systemically through my family, probably going all the way back to Poland, where my dad's side of the family is, and my mom's side of Irish. But they were predominantly hurt as children, and they gravitated towards drugs and
Mm.
alcohol. And my father left very young, when I was about 7 years old. And my mother, she really couldn't deal with it mentally, and so she turned to more drugs and eventually to prostitution and all different sorts of things. And we, as little kids, my brother and my sister, and we as kids, we were just kind of raised in it, and we thought it was normal. And eventually it came down to the point where my mother actually lost custody of us,
Mm.
because me and my brother were running around at 3 in the morning, and neighbors started asking questions. So we ended up getting taken into a placement, kind of like a shelter home for boys,
Mm.
a group home, so to speak. And my sister, she was about 16, 17 when it happened. So she had friends, and she just totally split and went with her friends, so she really didn't have to go through that. But me and my brother did, and we were pretty much in placement until 18 years old.
And when did you actually get taken from your mom?
So
How old were you?
it kind of so I'm sorry if my memory fails me. I kind of bunch it up. I
Mm.
remember the places, by the places I lived. Yeah, I lived in so
Mm.
many places, and because I was on welfare and would jump from Section 8 house to Section 8 house, constantly getting kicked out. But there was times where my mother did, she got better, and she got better, and we were allowed to come back with her. And it was during the time when I was probably 15. We were in placement for a while, and
Mm.
during about the time I was 15, we were allowed to leave and go and live with her again. And that's kind of when I met these group of kids that became like a gang kind of thing. And but it was like a bond of brothers that I grew this bond with, that literally only separate the only thing that separated that bond was actually death. And but
Mm.
yeah, so I had not the best upbringing, but I'm not complaining.
Wow. Wow. And if you would share with me, you talk about, it's one of those things that I hear a lot in guys who especially grew up in environments where there was a lot of pressure and a lot of things that were uncontrollable, outside of your control in every area of your life. And gangs seem to provide for those of us that have such constant chaos, a form of stability, a form of consistency that we desperately are looking for. And is that group of guys that you started hanging out with, what was it that really kept you guys together? What was kind of the ethos of it? You said it's something that wasn't separated till death, but what was it that really drew you all together to stay together?
So we kind of grew this bond together. Most of us, we all grew up in the same neighborhood, but some of us were cousins. But two of the friends in my group were actually my blood cousins. But we kind of grew this bond together that was unbreakable because we fought together. We used to fight each other to make ourselves better, so that we could go to rival neighborhoods and just we like to fight, and we never really like the gun thing. We never got into the gun thing. We never carried weapons because with three of us, we could take down a whole party. All you'd have to do is be very strategic and blocking the doorways, and you can have the whole party stuck in the house, so to speak. But so we would fight each other, and people would see us on the street, and we'd be beating each other up. But we grew it grew to the point where like we liked we would go home with bruises all over our chest. We really didn't hit in the face. If you hit in the face and then someone got, you were allowed to hit in the face, but we like brutally beat ourselves up in the chest to make ourselves fit to about 2 years into that process. I was able to literally lift my arms up and just let my friends just go on. And finding out why, because I was very good at it for some reason, and I ended up finding out later on in life why I was able to endure so much pain and so much uh, pain and brutality, pretty much punching wise, to my chest area. Um, but yeah, it was mostly the fighting, and we got stuck in a lot of situations running from the cops, and those type of stressful situations really brings people together.
Yeah, it does. So as you were growing up and you finally got out of kind of high school or maybe custody with the state, where did your life end up going from there?
So I ended up right after placement because one of my family members actually took us out of the placement after we so it's kind of it went like this. We were in placement since I was 7, and then around the time of 13, a aunt of ours actually took us out of the placement, and we got separated, me and my brother, and we lived there for a while, for about 2 years, and then they kind of gave us up. We went back to the placement, but then another aunt kind of got us out there, and we lived there for a good 3 to 4 years, and then my mother got better, and we were allowed to go back with her, and then she got back into her ways, and we got sent back there. And we got sent back there. I had to stay there till 18, and eventually my brother, he got out with my aunt. And so as soon as I got out of placement in high school, I got a job at the high school because I got kicked out of most of my high schools that I went to for fighting. And so I was in this alternative high school, and I actually got a job there when I graduated because they had these like a shop kind of class, and you
Mm.
could school trades and stuff like that. And no one else really wanted to learn trades but me. I'm hands on. I love to move around. I'm always active. I can't sit still. And so I kind of really clung to that, and they really liked me. And most of my life, I've had so sucky situations, but it reminded me of like a Joseph moment where like I was given grace by these random people, that didn't know me from nowhere, but they 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 looked out for me, and I was able to kind of live comfortably in these placements, and then also after the placements getting a job with the school that I was working for, and I became a maintenance worker for about 4 or 5 years.
And from there, where did you end up starting to learn the trade of carpentry and building?
So I'm not a carpenter. I'm a commercial painter, but
Ah,
yeah. But after that, my uncle owns a pretty big painting company in Pittsburgh, and I started painting for him. And as because he offered me a job, kind of 4 years after I was being a maintenance worker, and I took the position, and I still am painting to this day.
Man. So what is it that started to really kind of wake you up to an alternative side of reality?
Okay, so I felt like I was kind of meant to be here to fight something, and I felt like I had
Mm.
to get ready. All my life I've been unprepared, and I never have been prepared for any type of thing in my life. And so I very at a young age I started preparing. I was a doomsday prepper. I actually took out credit cards and 10,000. I racked up about $10,000 worth of debt grabbing guns and ammo. But and then I started kind of getting delving deep into ancient aliens. That was like my first thing, kind of getting into it was ancient aliens, and learning the mysteries and stuff really captivated me. And I slowly started going down that rabbit hole, and then a Rob Skeba video popped up, and it blew my whole entire mind, changed my whole entire life. And slowly I started gravitating towards the Bible, and now I believe it full heartedly that it's the word of God and I should take it literally.
Wow. Do you remember what was Rob talking about in that very first one
It,
that got you?
it was definitely the giants. It was definitely the mythology. I'm a history buff. I love history and I love the mythology. I used to love Greek mythology and stuff like that. And just learning that those mythical creatures were actually real. These things actually live. They're not just fairy tales and mythologies. These, what the ancients actually talked about, these things were real. And they were definitely from the Genesis 6 experiment.
That's awesome. For those of you that have not heard of Rob Skeba before, Rob Skeba was instrumental in many people coming to understand, maybe just having an answer to a lot of those like probed, unanswered questions that we've had throughout our lives. Like for you, Zach, I took a lot of Greek and Roman mythology too in college, and I always had a fascination with trying to understand what is the true origins of so many of these legends and these myths that we are kind of around us. And Rob was an incredibly articulate speaker about all of a variety of topics, and he came through a biblical lens on so many of these things. But also he had a passion for history and for all kinds of research that just was brilliantly done. And so he was somebody who was a forerunner for a lot of people coming to understand how the world works, who is really running the world, and how did we get to where we are today. And so he was also very instrumental in my life. And someone who I spoke a lot with at conferences and grew very close with, and was very pained to be there after he died in Texas. And he's missed dearly. There's a lot of folks that have been greatly affected because of that man's lives transformed. A lot of people who came to the faith. He definitely encouraged me to come back to the studying of the word and a zealousness for the word like never before in my life. And I started reading Genesis like I never had before. After that, I started hearing all this stuff. I'm like, what? I remember trying to talk to my wife and explain to her Nephilim, and she was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, honey, it's Genesis 6. And she read it and she was like, it's in the Bible. I'm like, it's in the Bible. And she's like, it's in the Bible. I'm like, yeah, this whole time. And man, it's dude, it's like cracking open that door. Once you're in, you're like, no way. This is way more exciting than anything I got. Like, why didn't they lead with this in Bible
Yeah,
class? Like, our
exactly.
lives could have been so different.
Exactly. And like just like what Steve like I think it's Steve Quayle says this that Genesis 6 is the literal Rosetta Stone key. It's the key to unlock the Bible because when you're going through the Old Testament, you're seeing, the father saying to the Israelites, wipe all these men, women, and children out, and you're like, what is going on? And you got atheists out here that are like, oh, you got a genocidal God and he's a maniac, but you really don't understand what these things were, and what they were
Mhm.
doing. The things that they were doing were the most unspeakable abominations that literally had to be wiped out. It had to be utterly
Mhm.
destroyed. And when Joshua didn't destroy all of them, he left one race. It slips my mind. Forgive me, but they became the water bearers. I believe the
Gibeonites.
yes, exactly. They became the water bearers who were the Pharisees of modern day when Yeshua was around. So it's so, getting into this study of the word has transformed my life. It transformed everything about me. I used to care about what I look like, what I wear, how I present myself, and now I'm a total mess, and that's just how I am, and I just, that's what you get. So, um, it just, getting into the word, becoming a father, because me growing up, I didn't have that male role model in my life. So I've been kind of looking at all these different male role models in my life, and I was kind of mimicking them, kind of taking portions of what they presented good in my life, what I wanted to emulate in my life. So I took pieces of them, but I always found something that, like, oh, something disgusting, something evil, something that it just, I didn't want to put into me, kind of didn't want to put onto me. And so I was always trying to find this male figure to kind of resemble my life to, so I can become a man.
Mm.
And I really didn't find that until I read the word. And when I realized that I have a father that I can emulate, me he gave me the exact example of how he wants me to walk, and that's Yeshua. If I follow him, he tells us to walk in his ways, to be like him. So I'm going to try my hardest. I'm going to try with everything I got, because that's the only thing that really matters, I believe.
Absolutely. I think you represent so many men that are desperate to understand masculinity, that want to know what it makes a man a man. We're raised even when we don't have that true understanding, it leaves us totally lost and directionless. And so like we have cultures that show us this is what manliness looks like, and fighting for is there for a reason. It's a way of trying to get power and demonstrate that you have power, or find out who has the most power, and it's ultimately a big wrestling match for that. But I've kind of noticed a theme with people that are actually on frontline ministry. A lot of them have tenacity to be fighters. They've been fighting their whole life by and far. They've been fighting from the beginning. Like they have had that warrior passionate zealousness from the very beginning. And so it's one of those things I really struggle with is when I'm trying to like encourage people to go after it and be effective and get into frontline ministry, or be effective at actually like taking the truths and the things that you've learned and trying to go and hunt the souls of men. Like that's to me like prime directive number one. And I struggle when I find people who won't, who don't. And so I was really, really thankful when you did reach out to me, like Zach, for those of you that don't know, has been utilizing TikTok as a means of sifting out the nations and hunting the souls of men. And now, how Zach did that process begin for you?
So, getting into this research, I'm very outspoken about what I believe in. So anywhere I go, I'm just chattering away, because I don't know what type of seeds I could be planting. These seeds are, I'm popping these seeds out everywhere, and people are like, "Dude, you need to like get on Facebook or something." Because I gave up on Facebook a while ago because I was just getting censored so bad. So I gave up on all the social media, and then people were like, "Dude, you just need to get into like TikTok and this, that, and the third." And my wife had TikTok, and she was always the endless scrolling. I'm always the endless scrolling, and so I was like, you know what? Maybe I could utilize that, because I seen of how an effective tool it was to get her on that app. She's constantly scrolling. So if I make a some type of video, short, sweet, with a packed with information, with a little bit of truth seeking music in the background, I could captivate the youth. And that's what I started doing. At first, I started just getting pictures of like giants, and then I'd have Destiny Lab playing in the background, and talking about the giants. If you haven't heard of it, they're like a Christian rap group that talk about giants and Nephilim and all that. But yeah, I started making videos, and then I started realizing that I needed to implement the people that taught me kind of how I got here. The only reason I really got to this belief was because of the forerunners of this knowledge. The L.A. Marzolis, the Steve Quayle, Rob Skeba, Zen Garcia, all these different people. I was like, okay, well now, once I gathered a following, I was like, I can actually promote these people that I've learned so much from, and that's what I started to do. And one of the videos that I made of Rob Skeba, it wasn't a video of Rob Skeba, but I was pretty much talking about a theory of Rob Skeba, where he talked about the Paramount logo with the 22 stars and the emblem. But if you look in the Book of Enoch, it talks about 22 stars of the chief. They were the chief of the archons that came down, the watchers. They were the chief ones that went around the mountain and made this pact. Well, I kind of broke it down and showed the Paramount logo in the background and kind of deciphered it all through the video, and it actually reached 10 million people. 10 million. And I don't know how that reached that much. I know it was only by the will of the Father. But I believe that seed was set, and it made me gather a lot of people on my TikTok. And it was so great because all of the people that I was pretty much promoting, they all got to see that. They all got to go through my page and see these people that I'm promoting, and they're learning more truth and more truth. So that's kind of how it started off for TikTok with me.
Wow, man. Wow. For those of you that aren't as familiar with what he was just talking about, there is back at Genesis 6 there's some very key moments of understanding why we are where we are today. Like, rather than just looking, there's two main areas that you have to attack when you're dealing with giants. In Amos 2:9, it says basically let me just grab it for you, because we got to talk strategies for how we destroy this entire network of radical intelligent evil that's just raping and pillaging and plundering society. And Amos 2:9 has this passage. Anytime, dude, I'm just always looking for ways of fighting, in the scriptures. So anytime I see this stuff, I'm like, oh yes. Check this out. He's talking about the wicked here in the book of Amos here. He says, and thus said Yahuwah, for 3 transgressions of Yisrael, and for 4, I do not turn it back, because they sell the righteous for silver and the poor for a pair of sandals, who crush the head of the poor ones in the dust of the earth, and turn aside the way of the meek. And a man and his father go into the same girl to defile my set-apart name. And they lie down by every slaughter place on garments taken in pledge. And in the house of their mighty one, they drink the wine of those who have been fined. Yet I destroyed the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars, and he was as strong as the oaks. Yet I destroyed his fruit from above and his roots from beneath. This to me was like fundamental warfare strategies for how they could actually kill and fight back against these giants. The Amorites is one of those tribes that was to be blotted out when they came into the land, the promised land, the land of Canaan. And when they came into there, the Amorites, you see here, it's talking about the height of the cedars, y'all. The heights of the cedars is hundreds of feet. So you want to talk about the biggest cedars in the earth? They're all over here in America, by the way. They're not over in Lebanon, the country. But they are 400 feet tall. We're not talking about some kind of like tall dude. We're not talking about some guy with giganticism and is 9 foot tall. We're talking about supernatural, gigantic beings, like living mountains, huge monstrosities of creatures. These things required an incredibly different form of tactics and strategy. And there's a reason when they sent in the 12 spies to go and check out the land, and they're like, listen, the heights of their gates and their cities reach to the heavens. They're not joking. These things were unbelievable. It says that we are like grasshoppers in their sight. And I just want you to stand for a second. If any of you have never been to like the Sequoia National Forest or seen the redwoods, like when you stand at the base of those things, you are straight up a cricket at the foot of that thing. You are like that. That's what you're dealing with. And so there had to have been a strategy to go in there. And Joshua, right before they go into battle in Jericho and invade the whole entire territory, the captain of the heavenly host comes and like meets with him with his sword drawn. And I believe that's literally the time when the company commander came and met with his general and is like, here's what's going to go down out there. You know what I mean? Here, come here, Captain. We're going to go have a talk. And it's like he gave him the download for how to physically and conquer these people. And they had training, basic combat training in the wilderness with these 20-year-olds and under. As they grew up for 40 years, those people got specialized combat and tactics instructions for how to fight these bad guys. And so they had an understanding of what Moses was referencing back in Genesis 6 when he said, and in the days, let's just read it real quick, because this is one of those reasons. You got the main incursion, the first incursion of the serpent coming in the garden, and then you have a second incursion of a major cataclysmic event that takes place in Genesis 6, or that's mentioned in Genesis 6, that takes place really in the days of Jared. And it says, and it came to be when men began to increase on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of Elohim, this is angels, by the way, this is not sons of Seth, this is sons of Elohim. These are B'nai Ha-Elohim, angels, okay? Watcher angels, specifically, a class that we could call Grigores in the Greek terms. They saw the daughters of men that they were good, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. And Yahweh said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever in his going astray. He is flesh, and his days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of Elohim came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, the men of name. And Yahweh saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his hearts was only evil continually. And Yahweh was sorry that he made man on the earth, and was grieved in his heart, and said, I am going to wipe off man from whom I've created from the face of the ground, both man and beast, creeping creatures and birds of the heavens, for I am sorry that I've made them. There was chief leaders of these rebel messengers, these rebel watchers who came down. What he is talking about, those 22 stars, there's 22 specifically named deities, mighty ones, who came down, and they were the ones that were in charge, the shot callers. And it describes some of the attributes of the secrets of wisdom, of secrets of heaven, that they came down and taught men. And a lot of it had to do with violence, astrology, divination, medium, sorcery, necromancy, battle, all types of different ways of making weapons and armory and mixing of metals and music. I mean, there's a great variety of like pouring out of the occult sciences, for lack of a better word. Another guy who's got I don't have it right here. Anyways, it's in the other room. Gary Wayne wrote this book that's called The Genesis 6 Conspiracy, which is one of the best books to go through, reading kind of the actual like perspective of lenses of what all these people believe and why they believe what they believe. That book goes into a lot of really profound detail. But the book of First Enoch that he just mentioned there, Zach, deals with what they did and why they did it. And that insemination of their seed line produced an offspring of hybrids, like you see right here, the Nephilim. In Deuteronomy, you hear about these other classes of beings, these other mighty ones that were immortals. You had these immortals that were having sex with women, and then they gave birth to the Nephilim, and now you have a partial mortal and a partial immortal stuck together. And after the flood, this is literally where we got these disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, because their souls, after they died, could not go and be in the heaven. They also couldn't leave the earth, so they were bound here. And this is what became these tormenting beings, these giants of spiritual stature that we're wrestling against here. And so the book of First Enoch is one of the best books to be able to examine and understand a lot more of this minutia of why you got here. And Zach, I think you put together a lot of these videos, man, that are just, they're simple and they're profound at being able to communicate these concepts to people that need to be able to hear and get exposed to that in a really profound way.
Yeah, because this youth today are illiterate. I'm illiterate too, and it's just because I'm kind of raised in the youth itself, but no one can sit here and watch a 2-hour long video, or sit there and listen to that nowadays. I mean, I can, because I trained myself to sit there and listen to podcasts, or to listen to the Bible on repeat, or extra biblical books on repeat. I can download them on audiobooks onto my phone, and I listen to them at work. And but I realized that this generation does not, they need something short, sweet, and right to the point. And that's kind of where I would watch your videos or someone's videos, and I would find that right where they're on fire, speaking the truth, just letting it all out. And I would I'd captivate that, put it into put it in the TikTok app, and put a couple memes around it or whatever, make it seem like fancy, snazzy, and I would post it. And I've been getting good luck with it. The shadow banning, though, it's difficult. My videos used to reach about 100,000 per video. Now they reach about 300. So it's near the election. It's going to be a roller coaster. It's usually how they are.
Wow, what a See, and you know, my hope, Zach, too, is that you will also find a way to consolidate all of the content you have created on your own site, you know, because you've worked really hard on this stuff, and for people to be able to have a way of digesting it and having access to it without them pulling the strings on how much it's allowed to get out there. You know, even when if I go on Facebook and upload one of my videos, like one of my full videos or even one of my short videos, if I go on there and I post one of those on there, I might get 15 views or 4 comments, you know.
Mm.
But if I write out a little comment and talk about some stuff and post pictures of, you know, my family or us doing something, there'll be like 1,500, 1,800, like instantly, you know. And so we really are battling these gods of the algorithm, for lack of a better word, man. This is, we are contending with a totally different thing, and you kind of are stuck with, like, I've had people try to tell me how to like create content in order to get the algorithms to start playing your stuff and working with it. And it's always, to me, I feel like it's a internal war that I don't want to just do things in order to please this algorithm, you know. But at the same time, I understand that it's you guys are also being shrewd in finding way to deliver what it is that people are needing in a way that you can reach them. Because you're doing it that way, you're reaching an audience that like you said, they're not digesting long format interviews, you know. But by being able to find a way to effectively reach them, you're waging a war in an arena that's desperately needing it. You need to be shining a light there, and I think you've done it in a very profound and effective way.
Yeah, so because like we talked on the phone about this, that I feel like what I'm making here are like throwing knives, little sharp throwing knives that are hitting the target, you know. But I feel that with the algorithm stuff that you were talking about, I definitely agree 100%. I don't think that we should just like I don't want to change the way I do things just to appease everyone else. The father made that one video explode to what it did, and he'll do it again. It's just when it's up to him, and that's fine with me. I will preach to no one in the room until it's the last one, and that's fine with me because I know that someone might be listening. It might eventually reach someone. I've been contacted by people in Uganda. I didn't even know where Uganda was. I had to look it up on a map, but there was people contacting me like, "Dude, your videos are helping me out," and I'm like, well, "That's amazing." I didn't know that I could reach that many people, but I have, and I know that I've been given this this gift that I see, like I'm able to captivate the very juicy parts of what I feel needs to be presented to the youth, to the world, and I feel like I've done pretty good at it. I do have a YouTube that I do 10-minute videos sometimes. I really don't post a lot because I'm pretty busy. I got a full-time job, 2 kids, one on the way, and plus I run a couple different TikToks for a couple different creators because they have large YouTube channels like yourself, and it is kind of hard, and I do understand that. So any way I can try to help out, and you know.
Yeah, man, you're a great servant for the kingdom in a serious and effective way. And there's a lot of people that don't know that you're someone behind the scenes who helps a lot of ministries out there. And I just want to appreciate the labors that you've been putting in there for many years. You know, we you don't know. I know it's easy to look at those numbers and think that they are accurately reflecting the impact of what's happening with that. But I tell you what, David was really strongly warned not to number his troops for a reason. You know,
Yeah.
like this, he got in a lot of trouble because he ignored the advice of his general. You know, and Joab was trying to beg him, don't number your troops, David. Don't number your troops. You know, Jonathan, who he had his best friend that he had gone in this covenant with, he had this incredible showdown with the Philistines back in 1 Samuel 14. And they're like, he's with his armor bearer. And they're like, you know, should we go up and fight against these guys? Like, you want to go fight against these guys? He's like, yeah. How about let's find out. Let's say if they say, come on up here, then we'll know we should go into this battle and this showdown, you know? Dude, they went in there, and Jonathan had this ideology about courage where he's like, listen, the battle is not won by number of men. You know, it's not won by strength of arms, nor by like sword or by spear. Like David and Jonathan had a keen understanding of an awareness that, like, we don't need to have the numbers. We don't need to have the numbers to win a war. At the end of the day, like, we need to have the favor of our king. And we're not hunting all the souls of mankind in order to win. We are hunting those that are absolutely, the Spirit's already drawing them to the Father. It's like that. I really believe he is the master tactician who sets people up to be able to be exposed to the truth. And at the end of the day, they may accept, they may not. But it's better to have 300 authentic views than to pay for 1.5 million artificial ones.
Thanks.
I have seen for those of you that aren't aware, behind the scenes, y'all, there's marketing companies that are continually blasting content creators to hire them to create views, to generate robotic comments, to generate in the live chats. And like, there's so much screw it. I mean, there's other words I want to use right now so bad. All kinds of just shrewd psycho lies. It's just a bunch of lies to manipulate the numbers so that it looks like there is views. It looks like there's people behind these comments. So much of what you see out there is not reality. They're not real people consuming this stuff, reading or commenting or watching or sharing. So much of it is controlled by fake software that's doing it, that looks like it's a bot army for all intents and purposes. And so for people to try to maintain consistency of content production and relying on word of mouth to spread it, and the Father, all it does take, like you said, we pray constantly that the Father would bless the algorithms to get it to the right people that need it, and also to conceal it from those that don't. Because at the end of the day, there's also a great benefit in being light and effective, because when you grow to such a certain extent where you have so much exposure, it also opens you up to totally different types of attacks that we may not be ready to weather. And the Father has this way of preserving us to be effective in our roles and in our ministries at the sizes that we're at. But he can always add to us at any day or night.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's funny because when we were talking about the Giants, you mentioned a couple things that out of the questions I had, there it was the one out of one question about the Giants where they were being trained, the Israelites being trained to go fight these things. So when I first kind of got into the whole truth thing, I always heard about copper and giants. Have you ever heard of any connection that, dude, like, can copper kill giants? Like, I always heard Steve Quayle like talking about they encapsulated the bullet of the Kandahar giant, and they. But I looked into trying to make a fully copper solid sword, but it would be too.
You want to talk about that for a second? This is something I've been making. This is okay. So I'm totally right there with you, Zach. I've been trying to figure out how can we. I just love that you say this. All right, let me show you all the copper that's hanging out around me for this reason. Okay, so this is a 10-ounce nugget, 10-ounce little cube of copper as well. Because like you, man, I'm all about curiosity. I'm like, you know what? Okay, down in the underworld, back when I was going through like these ridiculous rituals, whatever you want to call it, man. When they would when they would pour out a drink offering of blood, they were summoning up these creatures, these serpents, all right? And they were obsessed with the consumption of the blood, and blood has a lot of copper in there, right? You got a lot of iron, Well, in certain blood, like, we are very deficient in copper. Copper is like one of these things that we have to have in our body in order for us to be able to absorb minerals. You need magnesium and copper, like the two most preeminent things. Well, most people are incredibly deficient of it, but people that are super high and regulated in it, their blood affected these beings. When these people were consuming this blood, and then these other like creatures that were very serpentine like, they would reject certain blood. They would reject it. They would like cast it out and say the offering is impure and all this other stuff. But I have always wondered and speculated, was that toxic to them because they had a higher copper content in their blood? And if that was one of those reasons that like they rejected them. The other speculation that I think is more scripturally based is why they use bronze weaponry. They use bronze weaponry far even into the Iron Age. If you start to go and examine, like, bronze, for those of you that don't know, is a mixture, a metal alloy of copper and tin. Okay. And so if you just take pure copper, like this is pure copper, 999, pure copper. Okay. But if I forge this out, like I did, I forged this out at a blacksmith shop in, where was that? In Joplin, Missouri, a really incredible blacksmith out there. And one of my buddy, Patrick Rohrman, who makes these neck knives that I wear all the time. He and I went out there, and I told him, hey man, I really want to make something that's called Makume, Mokuma, Makome Gane, Gane. It's like a Japanese style of jewelry that's used for jewelry. It's used for artisans, like trademark kind of craftsmanship, little items and kind of widgets and fidget toys and stuff like that. But it's copper, silver, and gold. Well, what happens is when you mix copper and silver together and try to like do a Damascus style with them, they react to each other. So like copper and silver coins, if you put them in your drinking water or your water bottles and stuff like that, they will do an exchange between the two of them because they're different, right? And they'll attract each other, and so they'll kind of break each other down. So in jewelry, it can look pretty cool because you get this kind of like acid etched look to it. But I was trying to like forge one of those out, and so I was layering in copper and silver, but they melt at very, very different temperatures, and so you can't. It's really hard to work with, and I had a heck of a time, but if you melt copper and nickel and silver together, it works a lot better if you start to layer those together. So copper, pure copper, and nickel, which is what is actually in your quarters. If you take United States quarters after 1964, they're basically one of the ideal ratios for copper and nickel to create an alloy. And so I did a bunch of layers of them. We formed a billet out of like stacks and stacks of copper. We heated it up and smashed it down and forged it out. And this is some of the first ones that I made. This one doesn't look as Damascus. You can see a little bit of it, I think, on the let's see the edge there. You can see how I was doing that there. But this was like, so I've got a bunch of these little billets and stuff that I haven't finished forming out into some blades because, dude, I'm just like you. I want to run out there and do experiments and cutting into these things because I do believe there's a toxic effect. When David fought Goliath, y'all, he had said that he had nothing but a staff in his hand. Okay. He killed Goliath he didn't kill him with the stone. He killed him with his own sword. And there was this principle that's required in dealing with these other beings, that you dismember them. You cut their heads off. You keep their heads separate from their bodies, because this word Rephaim, which is like a class of these beings, these mixtures between angels and man, that are called Rephaim and Nephilim, okay? And the Rephaim are like kind of that first generation, like the purer bloods of it. And then as they kind of like, there's this like degradation of the bloodline purity as they went on, because there was less angel DNA and more human DNA. And over time, some of the healing benefits that came with that, their ability to like regenerate their bodies. This is kind of, when you start to dig open the word Rephaim and Rapha, there's this aspect of like the ability to heal themselves that's contained in there. And so this is why you'll see in these myths and these legends all about separating with vampires and werewolves and a lot of these things, that you separate their bodies, you tear their bodies apart, and you burn them for a reason, because they can heal themselves. And so this is why people used to drive stakes through the heads of vampires or people that were suspected of being Grigori. They would do this for a reason, because they have this ability to kind of come back from the dead. So one of the benefits that you'll find in like a lot of the legends about how people fought giants here, because this was the land of giants here in the Americas, and the way that they used it was copper tools. The copper trade in the Americas was preeminent as some of the greatest things that they had access to. The copper mines in Michigan in particular. Arizona has another the largest deposits of copper in all of the entire world, basically, are outside of Tucson, Arizona. It's unbelievable how much copper is there. But the purest forms of copper come right up there in northern Michigan, and they mine that stuff, and they find that exact variety of copper all over the Americas. I'm talking Central America, South America, coming from there. So there's this huge trade network for copper tools, and those copper arrows and stuff like that are the main predominant tool that was being used in hunting down the giants. A lot of them were red-haired giants that were being fought by the Indians because they were cannibalistic cult. That was like their big issue, y'all. Is they like to eat people. They're like, consumption of blood is their essential lust that these beings have, and you got to deal with that. So, dude, I am on a quest to try to make my own copper tools, and we got to go experiment with it. Bronze is a way better version because it's harder and it's tougher. The edge lasts longer. It doesn't bend as much. Like this stuff I can bend with my fingers. And so you have to harden it, and that's where tin is really good for hardening it up. And but I'm all about trying to do that kind of stuff, man. That's why I love blades.
Yeah. What is kind of interesting is that Rob Skeba brought up something that's in the scriptures about loosing the bands of Orion, and in mythology that these Nephilim had these types of bands that made them, I guess, like maybe it was a copper band that like hindered their power a little bit. And then in the scriptures where it says, "Can you loose?" I believe it's in Job. Who can? Yeah, Job. Who can loose the bands of Orion? And is that meaning like loosen Orion, the entity? I'm not sure. Maybe it is just talking about, because I know they mess with the Mazzaroth. It's not the actual the astrology. It's the actual, the Mazzaroth is the actual real calendar, or the star charts itself.
Yeah.
But
And I think really that was founded by Abraham. When it says in our English translations, I say that Elohim told Abraham, go outside and count the stars if you can, number them if you can. And then it says, and he did this, and it was counted unto him as righteousness. But the word that he used there is Sephir. He told him, go out and Sephir the stars. And the word Sephir is like connecting the dots. He told him, go out and connect the dots, tell the story in the stars.
yeah,
That's literally what he told him to do. And I believe Abraham is really the first person that deliberately was able to identify and write out the story that is in the stars. Do you have that book? You know the one I'm talking about. He's going to snag it. Watch this, dude.
the
Killing it.
the stars.
Yes. Turn it to the side there. Back it up. Yeah, right there. Hold it real still. Hold it real still so people can see this. That's The Gospel in the Stars by Joseph Seiss. Y'all, that is a fantastic book for you if you guys are trying to figure out what's the real story in the stars. There's a great destruction and a false version of it that came down with those watchers, but there's an accurate, precise version that came down as well from heaven.
Stars, it's amazing. And another thing that I was gonna mention, which is one of my questions as well. I know that in previous videos I've watched of you, you mentioned that most of martial arts came from the ways of Cain, and I was wondering if there is any type of martial arts that you know of, or was there a type of martial arts that was specifically designed to kill giants?
I think there is, without question, the majority of the martial arts we can trace back to like the sons of Cain in one side of it. There's this paganism, there's this ritualized magic form of it, like people that are wearing gis, y'all, people that are going into dojos, you're going into temples, you're wearing your death burial suit. But I go ahead.
No, sorry, Eric Wilson. I found him through you. He was a black belt, and he turned into a Christian because he realized that going through and mastering all these different martial arts, that they are all connected to this spiritual dark realm, that these powers that they are bringing up, the chi. And he said in his interviews that he was able to make one hand hot and one hand cold, and that was using this inner chi within him. But he started realizing that he was deriving that power from the pit itself.
Yeah. And I think that is a major component of so much of the origins of a lot of the major martial arts systems that are out there today. However, I believe there is, without question, a form of combatives that is not founded in that, because they like going back to that time in the wilderness, they had to have been preparing those men to be able to be soldiers, to have a combative forms of fighting, a physical way of fighting. When they came out of Egypt, y'all, on their first attack, that they get attacked by the Amalekites, by Amalek, y'all, they get their butts torn up. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they were not soldiers. You got to understand, they were not accustomed to fighting. They had been under the influence of the greatest military oppression that had ever been. They had been trained to be slaves. And so just like later on, when they that fight that goes down, Joshua is out there leading the army, leading the people, trying to fight back. And it's literally because of divine intervention that they're able to cast off and win in that battle. But every one of the people that had been more experienced soldiers, by the time they rot and die in the wilderness, so they're left with only Joshua and Caleb, and every man who is below the age of 20 years old becomes the new fighting force. They had to have been trained in a way of fighting that was specifically inclined. And I believe there was a pure form of combatives that goes all the way back to the days of Lamech, that goes all the way back to when these Nephilim and these hybrids were coming down and starting these battles. There was a form of priest class and occult knowledge that came with Enoch the evil. This is Enoch on Cain's side, which is totally where a lot of the mystery religions have their true origins from. Like the Freemasons like to borrow the lineage and say that, they go back to the sons of Seth, but the Enoch that they're claiming lineage and heraldry to is this Enoch of Cain, and that has a much more popular, and I believe much more publicized version of martial arts systems that we have today. And those, however, there's definitely methods and practices within there that are pure martial arts, that are just forms of combatives that are incredibly effective. Whereas, like when I went into the military, the United States Army, they had a form of mixed martial arts. It wasn't just one specific style and combatives that was used. You know, finding a way to choke somebody out it doesn't require you to go into a dojo. It doesn't require you to bow to a master. It doesn't require that. There's a way of cutting someone's Achilles to bring them down to the ground that is universal. You know, there was a way that they had to attack these giants with tactics and with an effective means of bringing them down into an arena that they could kill them from. And so there's clearly the favor of Yah upon them to be able to do that. Otherwise, he wasn't sending his warriors and his mighty angels to be able to do that. And I believe at any given time, there could have been angels from Yah that came down and imparted, this is how you can effectively kill them. If it was metallurgy specifically, if it's like, hey, these are the types of tools specifically to use in order to do that. Like I got really big when I used to do a lot of firearms training, y'all, and I got into frangible munitions, because frangible munitions, they dump and expel all of their energies. The United States Marshals use these air marshals. If you've ever been on an airplane, you got to start shooting people in an airplane. You need a specific type of round to be able to do that, to dissipate its energy without puncturing through the outer hull of it and depressurizing the aircraft and causing other problems. So there's a type of munitions that's used, it's called frangibles. And so like I always carried frangible munitions with like an RP core, this thing called Liberty ammunition, which was designed to penetrate body armor and then cause massive cavitation and stuff like that. So there's frangibles, and then there's literally like, that basically makes your bullet like a tiny grenade. And so I was really about pure copper ones like that, and then starting to make mixtures with silver, coating them with silver. And I started making my own ammunition for that reason, because I was like, we got to be able to fight these guys. You know what I'm saying? We're going to be able to fight these giants and these dragons. Ultimately, at the end of the day, y'all, I'm all about tungsten armor piercing. I'm just going to be super transparent. That's why this is back here. There's all this like sneaky stuff on my wall back here. It's another massive passion of mine. Like this 30 millimeter round. Look at this sweet mother. I love this thing, dude. Okay, I'm just going to go there for you guys real quick, because this is a side nobody really asked me a lot about, but I'll totally talk combatives and stuff like that, because I also am preparing to fight a giant dragon army. I'll just be super straight with y'all. And I'm like, you know, we got to find a way to prepare for that. Like I made a spear last night. That's what I did. I had a show that got canceled, and I was like, what am I going to do? I got 2 hours. I'm going to make a spear. So I made this spear.
Beautiful.
So this is hickory. Hickory is like my absolute favorite, one of my favorite woods besides Osage orange. And so this is an agate, and then I've got pitch. So that's like basically pine sap. I like pine sap. I like to put wild cherry in there too, because it smells nice. Pine sap, and then a little bit of fat and a little bit of hair from a deer. And then I've got sinew from a deer as well that I wrap it. You chew on it, and it like it's the backstrap. From the backstrap area of the deer, and it's like the thing that helps them actuate their legs. It makes them really springy. And but anyways, you take this out. It's like a little bit of almost like a tendon. It's like this clear thing right here. But you chew on it and you get it all moist, and it's literally, you wrap it around there and it hardens. And as it dries, it shrinks. So it shrinks down on there. And when you tie that down, and then I just wrapped the whole thing up with waxed hemp. And but anyways, I made that last night. I love doing that.
Awesome.
I think one of the best skills that we can have is making our own weapons. Super fun. It's super fun. But back here on this wall, a bunch of bullets. It's a whole bunch of bullets. Let me just show you my favorites. Okay, because at the end of the day, if we got to fight these things, right? You know what I'm saying? Like these giants. It says in the book of Isaiah, in the Greek, in the Septuagint version of it, it says like, open the gates, you rulers. Giants are coming to fulfill my wrath. You're like, dude, giants are coming back, y'all. We got to deal with that. Like I saw these dragons with my eyes, man. They made a firm impression on me. I understood that like there is a tongue of the Nahash. These things speak. These things interact. They are like real creatures. There is down beneath our feet an entire underworld of a different civilization that operates. And you know what? They have an agenda that is entirely different than yours. And I believe that ultimately they've been preserved until the days of wrath and tribulation. Like they're here to execute massive violence and bloodshed. It says in the end, there is a third of the world is going to get killed through famine, plague, and sword and beasts of the earth. And I'm always like, what the heck are the beasts of the earth, y'all? Like when you start to examine what are like these beings that come up out of the pit, and it says that they have breastplates of armor that's on their chest, y'all. It says that it's hyacinth blue, it's sapphire. Okay, so then I started looking up sapphire armor, and this is what led me down all these other trades of being like, we got to make sapphire plate body armor, and that's why I got all into these giant blocks of sapphire, right? And this is literally what the United States military and Russia and places they use for optical armor. You can melt something down called corundum, which is like alumina oxide, and you can cast it and make it clear. And they use that for optics protection. So like on the drones or on the F-35 Lightning or fighter jet, they've got these protective glasses on the front of it. Well, that's all sapphire, you know? And so if you have your plate carrier made out of sapphire, it shatters bullets. It's unbelievably effective. Been using it in tanks and helicopters as armor for a long time. But it literally says that this 100 million creature hybrid army has sapphire plate armor. And I'm like, well, dang, how do you penetrate sapphire armor? And I'm like, tungsten, API. So I got all into armor piercing incendiaries and stuff like that early on, very early on. Dude, this started super early for me. Like when I saw those dragons, I was like, how the heck do I penetrate that armor? That was like question number one. I'm like, I don't know. How the heck did we penetrate tank armor? And that got me into like all kinds of stuff like this. This is that 30, this is a 30 millimeter, comes from a 30 millimeter Vulcan, or no, Gatling, GAU 8 Avenger. It's like literally the size of an F-150 minigun. It's gigantic. It's amazing. That's how much propellant is required to shoot that thing. But they use depleted uranium, which I can't get my hands on. If any of you guys have a depleted uranium round for 30 millimeter, man, please reach out to me. Some of them, they make them in 7.62 54 too, which would be awesome. But I would love to experiment with that stuff. But here's smaller versions of it. This is a 50 cal. So you guys see those 50 cal, my favorite machine gun on the face of the earth, the Browning M2 machine gun, the Mongoose, shoots this thing. It's like a tiny little football going, thousands of feet per second. Now, inside this, can't really see it, but inside there is a tungsten core, okay, a penetrating core. So when this thing strikes the target, the copper jacket that's on the outside of this kind of petals away, and then the tungsten penetrator in there pierces right through it. It melts holes into armor. And this is what this one is, which is my other cube that's up here. This is pure tungsten. And so this little thing is outrageously, unbelievably heavy. It's basically exactly the same density as gold. And this is what is just amazing at punching holes through armor. I'm going to meet with a weapons manufacturer. I was supposed to meet with them yesterday, but I had all kinds of stuff come up. But they're making tungsten munitions for shotgun shells. Oh, it's freaking unbelievable. It makes me so happy and exciting because, you got to be ready to try to punch holes through dragons and stuff like that. And this is how I think you do it. This is another one. This is from a 25 millimeter. This thing is sweet because you can load this up. Inside here is a sweet secret compartment. I take my super hot, spicy, like ghost peppers and habaneros, and this is my like pepper shaker. I'm freaky, man. I'm weird. Anyways, but you put inside here an incendiary mix, which is like magnesium and aluminum and all this other stuff. And so this is how you can melt holes and stuff. And then you have your heavy, dense metal on the backside of it to go ahead and punch all the way through it. But this is the best part of all of them, though, is sabos, y'all. If you've never seen a sabo round, let me just teach you about the greatest thing on that. Let me just see. This is a sabo. This is one of the best gifts anyone's ever given me, and I still keep it. I treasure this thing immensely. This is from a 30-30. Okay, this is like what people use, like their brush guns, lever action, the like iconic cowboy kind of gun. Okay, this thing will shoot 600 yards instead of like 100, 200 yard like brush gun. This thing is, so what they do is they have these plastic sleeves, a sabo on the outside of this. And then inside of it, they have a smaller neck down diameter bullet. And so it can go at a way higher velocity out of the same cartridge. And so when you take that and put a tungsten as your sabo round inside there, man, it allows you to penetrate an incredible amount of armor. And so for me, man, like my passion, if I could just get locked away for a little while in a tinkering shop, man, this is the stuff I would do inside there. I want to make stuff like this, like I've like tungsten darts. When I figured out that people who play playing darts use tungsten darts now, I was all like ordering 5,000 from China. I'm like, yes, because I want a minigun that basically just shoots tungsten darts out of it. You know what I'm saying? Like a giant harpoon gun that shoots, harpoons this side, it's just like, this is the stuff that fascinates me. I keep it on my wall just in case somebody ever wants to know what I'm saying. Anyways, that's something I'm like, I geek out on at night. I like sit there and I have a whole entire chronicles on my website, on my desktop, just of research that I do late at night with dealing with armor and trying to figure out, going into all the dragon legends, trying to study all of like the giant legends, like what were ways people fought them. It's clear that fire and smoke was one of the ways that they would do it. They'd smoke them out and then they would just pinhole them full of arrows, like relentlessly so. And then that got me into all kinds of poison arrows and starting to grow my own plants for poisons. And so I'm like, we gotta poison them. We could preach the gospel to them too, potentially. I don't mind recruiting the hybrids all day long, bro. I'd like to preach the gospel to every creature, like it says in Book of Mark. But if they're not going to turn, we better also prepare for that inevitable combat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Because because I started off as a doomsday prepper, and like I said, I took out a Chase Bank credit card for about $10,000, and I totally blew it all on guns, ammunition, swords, knives. I really love axes. Axes are one of my favorite things. Throwing axes, I've been actually trying to get into lately.
Let me see your axe again. Go slower. Let me see your axe again. Why do you like the axe?
I love them. I love them so much. They're awesome. I like. I've been just really getting into. I moved into a new kind of. I haven't moved yet, but I am renting in a area that is called kind of. It's a forestry area, and there's trees everywhere. And some of the guys came over and they start chopping trees down. And I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing with that wood? They're like, oh, we're just gonna go grind it up. I'm like, I'll roll. I live on this big hill, so I gotta like roll it up the hill, and I'm rolling all these big logs up my hill just so I could like become a man and split this wood. I just need to do something, just get my hands dirty a little bit. And then I've been really getting into different types of making staffs. So this one I actually stained. I stained it with a black cherry. I was trying to turn the wood black, but it turned purple for some reason. And I don't know why I did that, but it might be the type of wood, which I really don't know what type of wood it was. But I kind of see, I carved it in here, and I put some epoxy. It's like blue. I tried to make it look like the sapphire stick a little bit. The one that,
awesome.
dude, I just, as soon as I heard that, I was just like, oh, sapphire and stick. And I started making walking sticks after that. And this one, I believe this is from a birch tree, if I'm saying that correctly. And I didn't stain this at all because you kind of planted a seed in me to try to find a natural way to stain, because I'm a painter. So I'm putting harsh chemicals on these woods, and I wanted to find a natural way to stain it. So I haven't stained this one yet. And I'm probably going to let this one sit for a while until I find a natural way of staining it.
Yo, roots, man. Roots are like where it's at when it comes to natural stains. Like roots of different plants and different trees is awesome. Like the Osage orange, which is like the one I get all my this one. This is, it makes this is its natural color. Like this is unstained. But if I take this out, once it's exposed to UV light, like that's one of the major challenges with woodworking at all. Like these are like boa or cocoa. No, what are these? Oh man, I just lost the name of it. It's like a purple kingswood or something like that. I lost the name of it. But when I first put these handles on this knife, they were literally purple. They were beautiful, like an actual purple color. But over time, they just darken to brown. And that's exactly what this will end up looking like that. If I leave this out in UV light, and it's almost always exclusively because of UV light, like mahogany, purple mahogany, heartwoods, all these things that have these beautiful natural colors, over time, it's pretty much a guarantee that they're going to lose that color and they're going to revert to mostly a brownish color, almost always. And so this is why some of them, like wild cherry trees and cherry staffs, are some of my favorite, because they naturally age over time and they create this beautiful colors. Like they season naturally in just a very, very beautiful way. But the roots of the Osage orange are bright, like glowing, like construction orange cone color. And you can strip those roots out, and then you can make your own dye with it. And that's one of those ways that you can dye your own staffs like that. There's a whole entire industry of working with like natural odd color woods. That's called intarsia, ENTS, intarsia. And those are guys that are all about either trying to just use no dyes or stains necessarily, but they find and select wood varieties based off of their natural colors and stuff like that. That's a really interesting little venue for you to dive down into. But natural stains and dyes are something that's always fun to do. Black walnut is generally everywhere right now. They've all dropped with their black walnuts. Black walnut is one of those dyes that's just ubiquitous. You can find it and make your own tincture and kill parasites with it, but it'll dye your hands, it'll dye anything, and it'll dye your wood too. So that's something that's fun to do, man. Just start experimenting with it. And birch, is your birch staff really light? Super light?
No, not really. No, it's actually kind of heavy, on the heavier side. The one that I stained here, this is actually super, super light. I feel like if I whack this on something, it's definitely gonna break.
Oh man, you gotta test it, bro. You'll know it. This is one of my little favorite axes. I like to carry this one. Someone gave this one to me. I still don't know who. Just showed up on my door. This is the he's got it, bro. Yes. I like this one. I sharpened this to a terrifying level. It's super fun. At the end of the day, man, an axe is going to handle long-term battle use way better Like I've got swords, that I chop into super hard dense stuff like ribs and stuff. And they chip, especially if you've got a really fine edge, you're going to jack that edge up. And an axe is going to hold that so much better over time. Like if you got to truly dismember your enemies and your opponents, y'all, an axe is very effective for that. If you want to crack skulls and stuff like that, like go hit trees like often with whatever it is you think you're like going to go to war with. Go try it out and test it. Like I test my tools. I want to know if I can delimb something. Like you got to know that before the fact. Remember, like David literally said when he was going out there to fight him, he's like, Saul's like, take my armor. And it's not that it said David didn't fit it. And remember, Saul was a head and shoulders like taller than all the other people in Israel. And he fit in that armor, which means David was a stout dude. He was a stout dude. And he also said that when his servant reported and suggested David to go to be Saul's like ukulele harpist, the guy who was delivering him all of this stuff, it said David was a man of battle. Like before the whole David and Goliath showdown, it's not that David had never been to war, been to battle. David still, his primary job was clearly shepherding, but it's obvious that he'd also gone to war before. That being said, David was able to put on Saul's armor, but the reason he said he didn't wear it was he said, because I've not tested it. Like, don't go into battle with something you've not tested. It's really critically important. And like I did that with this sword down here. Like I like to go out at night in the darkness because I feel so much more comfortable in total darkness in like the depths of a forest. I just feel so much more comfortable. Like I feel like great relief in that total place. And anyways, I go in there and I start chopping on trees and stuff. And so this is like another one that I wanted to test out. This is another little double-edged sword. If you can tell, I have a thing for these leaf-shaped blade profiles. They're very good for chopping. It's the most natural baseline thing for a person to do is make a chopping motion than it is to teach them to pierce or to thrust. That is not as natural. A default reaction when people are in a panicky fighting situation is to swing their arms like this, and so it's a lot easier to follow that edge. It pulls material into the cutting surface. Well, anyways, I took this thing out and tested it out and it chopped into some trees. And if you can see there, the blade has a bend to it now. Let's see if you can tell. It's twisted up and bent up. See that? That's a problem, y'all. Like you got to know if your blade twists when you go to chop into a tree. And this wasn't a super hardwood tree. You know what I'm saying? Like it bent up and twisted, which means the tempering on this, like it's not tempered properly to be able to do that job. Whereas these other ones that I have here, like this is a cold steel windlass. Windlass makes these cold steel Cobra. This is their, what is this one called? I can't remember, but I got this little tool. Dremel makes these tools, y'all. That's for engraving, and it's got like a tungsten carbide tip, and you can just write on metal like butter. And so I started writing all the words on there, like the scripture in there. Like, dude, yeah, this is so fun. Yahuwah reigns forever. I've got on there. This other one says proclaim the word. On this side, it says proclaim the word in season and out of season. Be urgent. Dude, I think it was $30, this little Dremel tool that I have. And I was like, this is amazing, because I always wanted to acid etch all of my blades. I wanted to laser etch and burn all of the scriptures into my sword. Like I just was like, I want to be able to pick up a sword that was the sword and had the entire Bible written on it in micro print. Like I used to cheat in school when I was young, and I used to do like micro printing and stuff like that to be effective in there. There was only a couple of classes I cheated all of them. I cheated in like constantly math. I don't know why, but in 6th grade, I just devoted myself to the answers in the back of the book. And I was like, if these doofuses are going to put the answers in the back of the book, sucker, I'm going to use it every day of the week. Anyways, that screwed me later on. Don't do that. It's not beneficial necessarily. You know what? The best thing to do is get out of school, even if you're 12. Best thing you could ever do, get out of school instantly. That being said, I love microprinting and putting the word on there. And so I just started like carving into this thing the other day and was like, yes, this is so sweet. So I've got all kinds of stuff. Fight the good fight on here. I've got the master shall rescue me from every wicked work and save me for his heavenly reign. Guard the commandments of Yahuwah your Elohim, to walk in his ways and revere him. Proclaim the word. Be urgent in season and out of season. Convict, warn, appeal with all patience and teachings. This is and there is no creature hidden from Yahuwah's sight. This is like, dude, I'm like, if I'm gonna go to war, man, I want some war verses on there. You know what I'm saying? Definitely. So I love it, dude. I love wood burning on my staffs. I like to wood burn the Paleo Hebrew and I like to wood burn scripture on there as well. But man, this is really fun because you can do it right on your blades.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's so funny how you just keep bringing up things that I had questions about. One of the questions, another question I had that's kind of related to what we're just talking about, is in Deuteronomy 6:9, the doorpost verse where it talks about. We can go there right now. Deuteronomy 6:9. It talks about writing the commandments on your doorpost and on your gates, and that always fascinated me. And I really wanted to get into start learning Paleo Hebrew so I could actually write that on my doorpost. Now that I'm actually about to buy a house, I really, yeah, I need to get
Hold on, I'm
that.
gonna get that out of the way. That's what that is, y'all. For those that chart back there, y'all, is Eric Bissell's Paleo Hebrew. It's from Eric Bissell, or no, erictology.net. That here. That is the Paleo Hebrew, y'all. And he has these charts for free on oh man, super zoomed in. He has those charts available for free downloads on his website, and you can go to like Kinko's and print them off. He's got all of his entire everything he's ever done, he's given away. Like, he's incredible, man. And Eric, I could not learn Hebrew from like the professorial types. I couldn't learn modern Hebrew. To me, it looked like ants all over the page. You know, I don't like when people add stuff to a page unnecessarily, you know, and like all of the vowel markings and all this other stuff, these ways of pronouncing, these Masoretic additions to the text. It confused the heck out of me, and it made me really like not interested in learning Hebrew. But as soon as I came into contact with Eric Bissell, this chart exactly on my friend Eric's wall, that had a symbol on it, this tet symbol, which is a circle with an X on it, was my family's heraldic symbol, which was like, for them, they said, was the mark of the beast. Like, this was literally like those who had this mark were carriers of the seed line of the beast, and you could be an embodiment of this and all this other stuff. Anyways, it's used as like a path coin in like magical circles to be able to like access the underworld and stuff like that. And I've always been like, well, what is that actual symbol? Like, what is it really? And Paleo Hebrew, that chart had it on there, and I'm all like, what? And my friend's like, yeah, that's Hebrew. I'm like, what? They stole the symbols. And I'm like, of course they did. They stinking
Yeah,
thieves.
yeah,
They're always jacking stuff and that's all they can do, man. They can only use what Yahuwah already gave them. You know what I'm saying? They're not original creators. They're not content creators. They are content manipulators. And you're like, dang it. And but that hooked me, man. He has a series called he has a Paleo Hebrew series on YouTube that's like 57 parts. That is, of anything to just turn on and listen to for endless hours. It's like, I mean, you're going to be at it a long time. Each one goes through every letter of the alphabet. The alphabet, y'all, is like the Edenic language. It's the first language. All languages came from the Garden of England, the Garden of Eden. Like, it is the Edenic language of creation. Like, the Father needed a medium to enact this great plan of creation, and he chose the word to do that with. And it says this is literally the word from Aleph to Tav, from the beginning to end. There's 22 letters in it. Those letters have meanings to them. They're not just like you and I would think of the letter A doesn't mean anything to us. The letter Aleph in the Hebrew brings with it all kinds of critically important communication devices, so that a child can look at a pictograph, what we would call like a hieroglyphic. They can look at that and understand the symbol for an Aleph is like a buffalo. It's like, it looks like, or an oxen, but oxens don't have beards, but the buffalo does. They look like this animal that if you were in an agricultural society, if you understood what an oxen did, or what a bull did on your property, man, that thing, if you have a trained oxen, he allows you to set a line on a field and be able to walk in it. He is the one who helps to bring fruition to so much life, like the architect, the author, the originator of all of this entire construct of society. There's so much of the creator's like story, the testimony that's written is all in the word. Like, all of our Messiah story, the entire story of creation, all of the story about the tabernacle and the testimony and like the creation of man, all of that is written in Hebrew, in the letters themselves, and is written in such a powerful and profound way, so that you can learn what the languages say by studying the Paleo Hebrew, like the old way of communicating. So that way, when you're going to communicate with people that are not speaking English like you do, you have a way of communicating that's outside of that. And it's this beautiful pictographic form. And so Paleo Hebrew from Eric Bissell was the way I finally was able to start to have a hunger for Hebrew and being able to translate the text for myself. It came from that. And so I am all about people getting a hunger for the word so you can know what it says yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And me, I'm about to purchase a house, and I want to put these on my doorposts. I want to put them on my gates. I I want to totally actually like live this out. I am trying my best to live it out now, but not even just saying if I get a house, I'd live it out better. But I really want to live this out like my life depends on it, because it does. It actually does depend on it. And it's so funny, you just keep mentioning things that I had questions about. One was also the mark of Cain. I always like hearing in the truth community, you hear so many different stories about what it was. I've heard that you can't, some people, it's because they're down in South America, they can't grow a beard. I've heard that I heard that it's a cross with or it's a circle with an X in it. I've heard that. I've heard that it's so many different variant, so many different things. I've also heard that it was the tremors. Like he had tremors. He was constantly wandering, and that was the mark of Cain itself. But I was just wondering, from your point of view, what you believed it was, because that would be very interesting.
Well, I was raised to believe that it is a birthmark that presents itself, um, and it's like your face turns purple. That it was like half of his face was purple or dark like red, and so like in my family and generationally, they would select like how they would choose their chosen one was because they had that birthmark, and so like when I was young, in particular, like when I would get flustered or upset, my face would start to turn purple, on half of it. And so like that was like for them, they're like, oh, this is a seed line of Cain. This is a mark of Cain. Like we're going to bring him into this entire other realm and initiate him into this other stuff because he has that. And so like that's one of those things they look for, and that at least was my family's reasoning behind it. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's how I was kind of taught and raised to believe. So I can't know for certain, man. What is the mark of Cain? I think I can know the fruits of Cain. I think I can know from the fruits of his family line and the family's trade craft to know what his fruits are. But I don't know that I can say with certainty what is the mark of Cain that he put upon him. But I believe it was a physical representation so that people could identify him from a distance and know that he is not like the rest of them. So I believe it had to have been a physical mark that he wore upon his body. I don't believe that it would be no beards, in that regard. I think it was something very distinct that was not like the rest of people. And so that's what's led me to believe that it was that mark.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Do you mind if I ask another question?
Fire him off, bro.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so this one might be new to you. This is something I found in this conspiratorial realm. So, supposedly in 1869, a Sir Charles Warren was searching on Mount Hermon, the supposed Mount Hermon that we're told of in Jerusalem, and he was about 9,232 feet above sea level, and he found a temple, and this temple was in a spiral way that it was built. And supposedly him going into the temple, he found a plate that had an inscription on it that he couldn't really decipher, so he ended up carrying it down off the mountain. It ended up splitting in two, and it was very hard to decipher. And they still actually don't know what language it is, but they believe it's some form of like the first form of ancient Greek. And the translation is actually you can actually find this. I looked it up, and it was actually a real thing. The guy is actually a real guy. And suppose this is the translation. It says, according to the commandments of the greatest, most holy God, those who those who took the oath proceed from here. And
Mm.
it's very telling. And I made a video about this and put it on my TikTok. I actually found this out through Now You See TV with John Pounders and David Carrico. I like to branch out with the different truth seeking alternative truth people I listen to. I don't agree with everyone's interpretation on the word, but I do believe that different looking at different perspectives, you're able to kind of gather in the full truth of it. But that was one thing that I was wondering if you've ever heard of.
I've not heard of that specifically, but Mount Hermon gets its name from the place where it is said that those 200 watchers descended and bound themselves by mutual imprecation, took an oath, in order to go ahead and leave their heavenly state. Like this is what he's talking about in First Peter in the book of Jude, where it says those angels, those messengers who kept not their first estate, their heavenly estate, but came down and made themselves with women, right? They are bound in chains of darkness until the judgment. That is literally what it says they did. And that's literally what it says they got that name from. And I believe that's right up on the Syrian border. It's like the highest place there. And there's a big temple of Nimrod that's like a United World Heritage or UNESCO site, that's guarded and treasured land. You know what I mean? You can't go dig there and look what's inside there.
The United Nation actually has a base up on some place on Mount Hermon as well, right next to the Nimrod Fortress as well, which is pretty interesting. And what's pretty fascinating, that I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so I'm in the Mississippi area, the like Mississippi, I forget what they call it, but like kind of the Appalachian Mountain area. And this book is called Giants on Record, and this is by the Jim Rivera and Hy Newman. And these guys totally went through the newspaper history of all the archaeological digs in America, and they put it into a book. And this has all the unusual archaeological discoveries in America that were hidden, that were discovered, and the Smithsonian came in and took them away. And what's really fascinating is that I live in Pittsburgh, and so there's history all around me. And I actually found out that in this book that there was a mound in McKees Rocks, and it was actually the biggest mound in North America, or not North America, in Pennsylvania. Sorry, it's the biggest mound in Pennsylvania, and it was in McKees Rocks, and the Smithsonian came in and totally destroyed it. But when they did, they actually reported in the Smithsonian documents, that they found giant bones. And I actually went down there and filmed the video about it and showed an older video, or an older picture of what it used to look like to compared to what it is now. It's a baseball field now. But when I was down there, you could feel the spiritual tension. And because you got to understand that this land was the land of the plumed serpent, and they worshipped this serpent. Most of them were a serpent cult. But I am starting to get into a new study of there probably were Hebrews here. There was so much archaeological discoveries that were found in America that shouldn't have been there. I mean, they were any of the Columbus stuff, even the Viking stuff, even the Knights Templar stuff. They were predating all this stuff that they just shouldn't be here at all.
Dude, absolutely. That's that book. One of my favorite books is Glorious Science. Let me grab it.
Yeah, I got to get that one. I have it. That's on my list. Oh.
She's got another recommendation that's in here. America BC is another one, which is a guy Barry Falls, I think is his name. America BC, but that one, this is the book that's called In Plain Sight, and Gloria Farley, she does a great job of showing this intercontinental trade of deities and gods and communications. These people are going back and forth all the time in all of these societies, man. These people lived here that were Hebrews and Phoenicians and Nordics. And I mean, the America is the old world, y'all. It is like the oldest occupied land. If you start to actually look at research of what's coming out and where they're finding like the origins of so much of our civilization, y'all, doesn't start over in Africa. I know that's kind of controversial, but it's because there's a lot of evidence that's been strategically suppressed in order for people to have a emotional and legal justification to say, this is our land of manifest destiny. These savages that are over here had no culture, no language, so we can wipe them out and blot them out. We need to kill and exterminate them as we see fit. But as they came over here to do that, the surveyors came in, and initially there was a whole bunch of geologists and surveyors and people that came over representing monarchies and kingdoms. Remember, this used to be France. The place I live in right now used to be Louisiana Territory and all this. It used to be France. This used to be France, and then it was Spain over here on this side, and there was England over there on that side. Like, this country has been run by a lot of different kingdoms over the centuries, and our history view is very, very minuscule. But you go back a couple hundred years, even President Lincoln is sitting there talking about the bones of the giants that we find in these places in his keynote speeches. You know what I'm saying? It's only in recent times that they've been able to take it away from all of that rest of that. But she goes through and documents all these other deities and makes comparisons to them and the cultures across the world, and a lot of them have to do with Egyptians. They start finding all of these very same. Here's more of those six-toed giants like it talks about in the Bible. Here's all the these six-toed petroglyphs, like it says in the scriptures, man. That's on page 325, but it talks about the six-toe stuff. And then she compares it to the six-toed stuff that's in Africa. Also, you start finding all these other, like the swastikas and stuff like that. I mean, there's all just
connected. That's all. Yeah.
But the Hebrew, dude, the Hebrew stuff is what got me launched, is because there's more Hebrew artifacts that have been found here than over there. There's been the greatest cover-up has to do with the cover-up of Hebrews, ancient Israelites being here in this land. And this book, Discovery of Ancient America, I think it's by David Deal. This deals a lot with, it's centered around the oldest actual copy of the 10 Commandments that's in stone in the world is in Los Lunas, New Mexico. It's literally like it's all in Paleo Hebrew. And this is the engraving that's on this giant stone, and that's the 10 Commandments. Somebody has defaced the first one now in modernity, but because people are like, no, it's not real. No, it can't be real. There's no way, man. There's no way. It literally says Yahuwah Elohim Sevaoth at the top, like engraved on there. They've got like beardless men engraved on there in their petroglyphs. There's a star chart at the top of it. This is ridiculous, dude. They have a star chart that's on the top of it, which goes back to basically the Sukkot in 3 BC. Like, these people were up there celebrating Sukkot in basically a military camp up there. And it aligns back to, let me see. It says the date, September 15th, 107 BC. That's the date that this goes back to. Y'all, ancient Hebrews were over here for a long time. And it was a fortification. It wasn't just like a place they went to one time. Like, this is a literal encampment that these people were building out at and staying and fortifying. There's forges there where they were melting down metals and stuff like that. This has all not been excavated. Like, they're like, nobody wants to look at it. They're like, no way, it's not real. It can't be real. But these are other artifacts that they find here in the Americas. This one is found in, it's from what? This is, it is Fell. America, BC is, and the author's name is Fell, Barry Fell. But like these ones, there's some in Texas coast. Look at this, dude. Look at this inscription. Levite priests, y'all.
Wow.
Hebrew letters. There was hundreds and hundreds of these artifacts, y'all. Even in the Smithsonian gave one back to the state of Tennessee. This one right here, the Department of Ethnology. This one right here. Dude, that's Paleo Hebrew. This one, which was excavated by them in Tennessee, they took it from them in 1885. It says a second Hebrew inscription was found in an ancient grave near Bat Creek, Tennessee. You can look it up. They call it the Bat Creek stone or the Bat Creek inscription by the Smithsonian Institute in 1885 and has been recently translated and verified as authentic. And you know why? It says, surely I pray to you, O Yah, have pity. Dude, this is somebody praying and crying out to Yahuwah. And you know what? The Smithsonian required, when they gave it back to the Bat Creek Museum or Tennessee, when they gave it back to them, they stipulated that you are not allowed to display it right side up. You have to display it upside down. Like, so they have this thing on display and it's upside down to try to throw people off, man. Like, all of the shenanigans, dude, constant shenanigans to try to cover up the fact that you betcha, dude, we've got a whole bunch of Paleo Hebrew and Hebrews here in the Americas. And it's because this obviously shatters their ideologies.
Yeah, and it starts to make me think too, like maybe some of the actual native tribes were those Hebrews, the Cherokee, maybe, I don't know who, but I still have to dig very much deeper into this topic. But I actually have the Abraham speech if you want me to read it.
Bro, do it. Abraham Lincoln's, do it.
Yeah. Okay, Congressman Abraham Lincoln visited Niagara Falls in 1848 and en route from Boston to Chicago and delivered a speech while he was visiting the area. Some strange comments came forth hinting he knew about the ancient giants. This is his this is his speech. When Columbus first sought this continent, when Christ suffered on the cross, when Moses led the Israelites through the Red Sea, nay, even when when Adam first came from the hand of his maker, then as now, Niagara was roaring. The eyes, the eyes of the species of the extinct giants whose bones fill the mounds of America have gazed on Niagara as ours do now. And that's like Abraham Lincoln was talking about this stuff. And now, I mean, I'm starting to even look into, I don't know if you've ever heard of this kind of off topic. What is it called? Becoming a state national. Have you ever heard of that? Like trying to. And so this is like I believe this is kind of like the worldly way to get out of the beast system. They they turn in their birth certificates, they turn in every single shroud of evidence, and they use they know that, I think it's Woodrow Wilson made the birth certificate, which pretty much made this country a corporation. And every time they print the birth certificate, they sell that on the stock market for money. And so these people are giving up their birth certificates and they are becoming state nationals, which is like kind of your God-given rights. But I'm in contact with another brother that's really into this, and he's into the Torah movement as well, and he totally is against that, because you're signing yourself into another contract when God, we are given dominion over this earth. We shouldn't have to sign a contract to be who we are, to live how we live. So, and also, I do believe that, he is going to come and grab us out of Babylon, because I live in I'm in the city right now, and long dream is to be out on a farm. I want to have a farm. I want to live in the woods. I just want to, be away from people as far as ways people as possible. That's what I would love. But I know that that's not where he wants me right now. He wants me in the city, in the muck and the mire where I grew up in. This is where I was raised, and this is where I can fight effectively because I know the terrain.
Indeed, we have a duty to still, as much as my desire, like you said, is to be able to kind of recluse away. It's there's a reason we still need to be effective warriors where he has us, because he didn't call us to go and hide and be a city hiding on a hill. Even if you're going to be the city on a hill, he's like, everyone can see a city on a hill. You're not supposed to go and live a monk lifestyle. You're not. We're just supposed to be able to engage in the culture. That being said, it's nice to be able to live outside of the city gates when you can.
Yeah,
It's nice to be able to live outside of it and go into the city when you need to. But like yourself, like I'm planted in a city now. We traveled all over the country, and there's times when we lived directly in the heart of cities, and there's times when we lived absolutely in the middle of nowhere. And at the end of it, part of my desire was a desire to escape the struggle, and escape the feeling of that rat race and that oppression that you feel in a city, and that there's no way around that kind of pressure. But we have a duty to be able to continually wage a war for the souls of mankind. And if we just go and try to avoid it because we know the truth and because we know what's coming, we should go and hide and protect ourselves from it. But at the end of the day, self-preservation should not be the paramount pursuit of the people of Yah. Like the preservation of other people's souls needs to be the thing that drives us more heartily into serving and ministering and being effective at delivering them from their strongholds. Like we need to be effective in the body. And so trying to remove ourselves completely from that system, while it's desirable, yes, I know that the Father can send our deliverance. He can send judges to deliver us from nations of oppression in a night. He can send a destroying angel to completely shatter and destroy our enemies, and he can ransom us and rescue us from all kinds of troubles that should come our way. But we have to be faithful and steady to be able to obey him when he says stay, like you're doing right now, Zach. As much as your desire may be for that, it's more important that you obey him, because in that place of obedience, man, that's where his protection lies. And now some of us he may have called to a rule and more lifestyle like that, and that's amazing. That's such a blessing to be able to raise up your children outside of that pressure and outside of that experience. But you know what? It's not reality for a lot of people. The vast majority of people they do not have that experience. And so if we just go ahead and continue to live this outsider lifestyle and try to call people to it, we got to understand that they're also looking at us like, can you guys come and help us and be effective here as well? So we have to be obedient to the place that he calls us, wherever that may be.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I I realize the impact that I have around the people around me. I know it might be small and minute, but that it doesn't matter as long as I can can get to one person. I can plant that seed into one person, and that's all that matters to me. And recently I've been starting a Bible study with my it's mostly my family. Only two aunts and a couple of her friends come, but I started a Bible study because I really wanted to explain the things that I've learned in the Bible. And my aunt, which is she's becoming one of my best friends, her son was actually one of my best friends that
Wow.
we were in that kind of gang with, not really a gang, it was like a brotherhood kind of, but we did some bad things. Um, but yeah, he ended up that it was a very traumatic. Uh, my cousin, my cousin had seizures, and
Mm.
he was in the shower and he was prone to seizures when he would get really hot, and he got really hot and I guess and had a seizure in the shower, and he fell and hit his head, and he died. And it really hit my aunt hard, and so I really was trying to help her, guide her through this. And one of the ways I tried to help was to create this Bible study, because it was like once that happened for her, because she was kind of getting into truth and the truth movement and conspiracies and stuff like that. Once that happened, the shackles were off. She was like
Mm.
shot off like a rocket, and she's learned so much in the past couple years. It's amazing, and it's a great testimony, to show that, all it takes is one thing, and it, that knowledge, that truth of that hunger to learn just gets instilled into people. And one of the things that really bothers me, is that I knew that he had this, and reading in the word and watching how Yeshua dealt with us. I'm guessing a spirit of a seizure. I'm guessing because
Mm-hmm.
the way he healed the boy with the seizure was he rebuked the thing with what was inside of him.
Mm-hmm.
And so that made me feel like I wasn't aware of that. And I felt like, I didn't have enough knowledge. And I felt like if I did have that knowledge, I could have tried to have helped or tried to do something to. But at the end of the day, if y'all wills it, it's his will. Let his will be done. And through all my life, it's kind of been like a struggle bus. I've been on the struggle bus my whole life, and I'm used to it. And it's like I am, I can handle it. I've been through so much things that I was made for this. And this end times, this apocalypse that may be happening coming up. I do believe we're in the end times. I was made for this. Like I was specifically picked out to be in this time because of what I've been through. I've been through most of the most crazy things that people have, grown men that I tell my story to grown men, and they're like, wow, that's crazy, because they, I'm about to turn 30 years old, and I've seen a lot of things, but it
Mm-hmm.
made me who I am, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
It's made you an absolute warrior, Zach, and I'm so thankful to hear you say that. That's the fruit of the right perspective in your life. And the Father can use you in a powerful and profound way because of it. We have to give him those layers of our testimony. And he's the one who has the power to do that. And you've overcome a lot of things, and a lot more than what you've shared here. You're a survivor and an overcomer in a very powerful and profound way, bro. And I'm really thankful to have met you, and I'm thankful that you are fighting for the right kingdom. You had every right to stay bitter and angry and pissed off and fighting people the rest of your life in that regard, but you found a better way to wage your war. And I really believe that you were born for this time. Everyone that's alive right now, man, is absolutely born for such a time as this. This is the time when people long to see these things that we're experiencing. People long to be a part of this time. Like the first are going to be last, and the last will be first. Like this is a great time to be alive. There's no greater time to be alive. That being said, there's way more exciting than any video game could ever hope to offer us, any movie could ever hope to entertain us with. There is more going on right now than ever has been going on in the times in history at any given moment. We have the access to an unlimited knowledge base, an unlimited database of information where we can study and show ourselves reproved. Like, we should be able to give an answer to everyone who asks us to give a question for why we have this hope. Like, why do we have a blessed assurance, like a true confidence amidst a sea of chaos and confusion? Like, why do we have peace? You know, that we are supposed to be peacemakers, and that doesn't mean we are not actively engaging in combat and warfare on a continual basis. The foundations for how we should train from that, I believe, are hidden right here in these words. I also believe that there's been systemically stolen from us, like the book of the Wars of Yahuwah. I don't know where that book is. You know, there's a lot of books that are talked about in the scriptures that we don't have. The book of Nathan, the book of Gad. Like, there's these really important books that I believe could make a huge difference for us. Oh, he's got one. Look at him, dude. He's rolling in it.
The book of Samuel, the seer, and Nathan, the prophet, and Gad, the seer.
Dude, what?
I am infatuated with extra biblical books. Anything that was removed out of the Bible, or anything that was mentioned in the Bible, I want it. And this is also.
Have you read?
I have not. I honestly, when I got a bunch of the credit cards and I started pretty much buying all this ammo and stuff, I started getting into the word and started getting into scripture. So I kind of realized, and I started noticing that on Amazon they were deleting books. And once I seen that, I bought up a bunch of them. And I bought up a bunch of the extra biblical so I can have a actual copy of it itself. But I hear good things about it. I'm actually going to listen to it because I listen to most of my books. I download them so I can listen to them at work, because I would love to sit and read, but I don't have the time. I just don't have the time at all. Also, one another question, if you don't mind, have you ever heard that? Now, there's an extra biblical book called I want to say it's called the Acts of Longinus, or I might be butchering it, but it's about Longinus, the soldier that pierced the side of Christ. Longinus, yeah, Longinus. And have you ever, now in this extra biblical book, I wish I could find the name of it or think of the name of it. I think it's and now I'm not sure. Now, I found this out through Zen Garcia, and supposedly when Longinus had, from a previous battle, he had a wounded eye. And when he pierced the side of Christ, some of the blood got into his eye, and he was immediately healed by his eye. And he realized of what he did. He killed the literal Son of God, and he wasn't not only was the eye healed, but he was able to see into the spiritual, and he seen the most amazing things during the crucifixion. And after that, he actually became a convert, and he followed the apostles around and actually became a bodyguard for them, and he actually was martyred.
I've not heard of that book. No.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to definitely send you that one. But I got a bunch of. There's a couple other questions. One though, in Psalm 77. I'm gonna actually go to it right now and read it. It's so fascinating. This right here makes it just coming into the belief of biblical cosmology and learning about the actual heavens itself, and reading Psalm 77 over again. It's so totally fascinating, and trying to picture ourselves up there, kind of like what is it like up there, or what. Psalm 77. Okay, it's Psalm 77, and I'm gonna start at verse 14. Okay, and I'm reading from the King James, just to let you know. Thou art the God that does wonders. Thou hast declared thy strength among the people. Thou hast with thine arm redeemed thy people, the sons of Jacob, the sons of Joseph. Selah. The waters saw thee, O God, the waters saw thee. They were afraid. The depths also were troubled. The clouds poured out the clouds poured out their water, the skies sent out sound. Thine arrows also went abroad. Thy voice of thy thunder was in the heavens. The lightning lighteneth the world. The earth trembled and shook. And this is the main verse that I was talking about. Thy way was in the sea, and thy path in the great waters, and thy footsteps are not known. And just thinking about like the waters above, and just like it's such a mystery, and it just makes me go down like a million different rabbit holes and trying to understand, and I probably will never understand it, but it's fascinating, and it's like a never ending, this book here is a never ending rabbit hole of different paths that we take. It's just it totally consuming. Totally consuming.
Dude, there's a passage he mentions, that part where it also says the waters were laid bare. The waters, they saw you and they were afraid, and the depths were trembled. That if you go to Psalm 18, there's a 2 Samuel 22 and Psalm 18 are like a parallel. They're like the same verse, same words, word for word, basically. It's a prayer of David. To me, this is like, I'm going to talk about some of the most powerful scriptures in the entire Bible. I tell people all the time, 2 Samuel 22, 2 Samuel 2:2, when you're in trouble, man. Pray that. Read that out loud. Psalm 18 is like that as well, man. These are like the power of testimony to fight back against it. But I was thinking about that portion where it says he's crying out to Yah, man. He's in a bad way right here, and he is crying out for help and deliverance. But he said, let me see here. I'll just start it, man. I love you, O Yahuwah, my strength. Yahuwah is my rock and my stronghold and my deliverer. My El is my rock. I take refuge in him, my shield and the horn of my deliverance, my high tower. I call upon Yahuwah, the one to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. The cords of death surrounded me, and the floods of Belial made me afraid. The cords of Sheol were all around me. The snares of death were before me. In my distress, I called upon Yahuwah, and to Elohim I cried. He heard my voice from his call, and my cry went before him into his ears. And the earth shook and trembled. Even the foundations of the mountains were troubled, and they shook because he was wroth. Smoke went up from his nostrils, and a consuming fire from his mouth. Coals were kindled by it, and he bowed the heavens and came down. And thick darkness was under his feet, and he rode upon a cherub, and flew. He flew upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, around him his booth, darkness of waters, thick clouds of the skies. From the brightness before him, his thick clouds passed hail and coals of fire. And Yahuwah thundered in the heavens, and the Most High sent forth his voice, hail and coals of fire, and he sent out his arrows and scattered them, and much lightning and confused them. And the channels of waters were seen, and the foundations of the world were uncovered at your rebuke, O Yahuwah, at the blast of the breath of your nostrils. He sent me from above. He took me. He drew me out of many waters. He delivered me from my strong enemy and from those hating me, for they were stronger than I. They confronted me in the day of my calamity, but Yahuwah was my support. That passage, man, and the channels of waters were seen, and the foundations of the world were uncovered. When you want to just try to think about how much material would have to be removed to get to the foundations of the earth,
And
to
just hit
get to, like,
just
just to
cleared it.
see it,
That's amazing. Yeah, that is
bro.
amazing.
And then the channels of the waters, like when we talk about, like, they call it like the Gulf Stream. They talk
Mhm.
about these currents of the waters. There's like an underground pumping system, a bathysphere pumping system in this earth that produces consistent tidal pressures. I believe the tides, that we're dealing with are why there's an extremity of tides in different places in the earth. It's because of their relativity to places where the fountains of the deep are opening up at different levels. Because if it really was the moon that affected our tides, it should be equal across all bodies of water. We should be able to see the same tidal effects in the lakes as we do in the ocean, and across the oceans, we should also see similar effects at that. But it's not, the tidal bulges don't exist at the exact places of extremity on the equator. They're actually at really different places, especially in the northern latitudes, like up in Nova Scotia. And like some of the biggest tidal areas are very much northern in the areas. And I think those are because of where these great fountains of the deep are gushing open. And then it talks about the mouths of the abyss, like it opens up their mouth when it was draining off the waters of the flood. He's like opening up the drain plugs, and he's all like, and this is why he said, I've set the limits for the season. They won't go beyond it. It's like when I drove around in the RV, man, for 4 years, I started parking next to gigantic rivers. Like where I came from in Colorado, you can jump over the rivers, and out here, like the river, like when we stayed at Tennessee River outside of, or maybe not the Tennessee River, it was at the border of Alabama. It like, bro, that river, they had a nuclear power plant. That river was like half a mile wide, and people's houses and everything were like this far from it. And I'm like, dude, how did they do this? And the ocean was the same thing. And I'm like, these water levels are fixed for a reason, like he regulates it with a massive systems of pumps and bilges and like, it's incredibly complex and a beautiful orchestrated system. And he literally is like, when he shows up, man, he can move all of the water out of the way and lay that bare so you could see it. That's an incredible sight.
It is incredible. And kind of what we're talking about is getting into this biblical cosmology idea of there being a firmament, a hard structure, firmament above us with the waters above, and kind of getting into the gravitational pull. If the moon is really causing the tides itself, like you said, it should do it everywhere at the exact same time, but it doesn't. And looking into that, there's a book called The Inventura Fortunata, which is an ancient, it's about the ancient explorers that went to the North Pole. Sorry if I can, that shine is bad.
I can see it.
Okay. But, and so in this book, it talks about the ancient people that went to discover the North Pole and what they talked about when they went up there. And some of their ship logs, when they were talking about it, they encountered this mountain that was there, and this mountain supposedly reached to the heavens, but it was magnetic. It was a lodestone black mountain, and this can be talked about in all mythology, all different throughout the world. Mount Meru, Mount Olympus, Asgard, all these different places. Even some people think that it could be the Mount of Congregation, Mount Zion itself, where the angels came and met in the book of Job, where Satan himself came up to the mountain of God. And maybe this in the North Pole is the mountain of God. And now in this book, it talks about how sailors would go up towards this mountain, and the nails of the boats would pull out of the boats from this magnetic mountain. And beneath the magnetic mountain, there is a whirlpool where in I believe it's called Helvelgrimer in Viking lore or something like that. It was a supposed sea monster, but it's not a sea monster. It's actually a whirlpool that sucks in the oceans 6 hours per day and then gushes them out every 6 hours. It's like a geyser form, and it continuously does it, and that's what causes the tides on the earth. And that's what I believe causes the tides on the earth. Looking into it, yeah, it's amazing. It is amazing.
That is fascinating.
And then looking into the word and seeing that when Yeshua was taken up to to this high mountain, and he was able to see all the kingdoms of the world. And now I do believe that if he's seen all the kingdoms of the world, that means past, present, future. So he's seen all of it. And also I believe that physically he could probably see from this advantage point, he could see everything, because if we live on a flat, non-rotating earth, if you're that high up, I mean, perspective, but we're talking about the Son of God here. So I don't think perspective is an issue with him. That's just my opinion.
And for me, this just always rekindles a desire to truly explore for ourselves. And it initiates a form of curiosity that we have had a systemic indoctrination of lies from the days of our youth, and the main thing that it was designed to kill, like compulsory education system. Like I always talking about John Taylor Gatto's book, The Underground History of American Education, because he goes through why the deliberate dumbing down of our society, y'all, like through this education system. Like he was required to make children stupid. Like, in the one of the main things that he was taught to, and this wasn't necessarily explicitly stated to him, but to kill their curiosity, and like that's one of those like hallmark things that happens if you sit down with a child and you open up an encyclopedia and you basically are like, any question you've ever wanted to know, well, let me explain to you. Where does ice come from? Well, let me tell you. Where does frost come from? Let me tell you. Where does the hot springs come from? Let me tell you. Like, everything that you could ever want to know has already been done. We already figured that out, basically. So shut up. There's nothing else out there to explore. We already know what's happened on the tops of the highest mountains. We know what's happened at the bottom of the oceans. We know how everything works. We know how plate tectonics works. We know why volcanoes work. Like, there's nothing out there to really be explored. There's only some tiny little pockets in the Congo, and otherwise, basically, there's nowhere for you to go. And it just kills people's curiosity. But you know what? When you start to read the scriptures, you start to describe how the world works, what happens out there. Like, there is accounts and historical events that take place in this book that clearly say the stars fought from the heavens. In the book of Judges, like when they're battling Sisera, it says the stars fought from the heavens. That's a totally different mindset. Like, what's happening there? Like, how can the stars fight for us? How can they physically fight for us in order for us to wage our wars? Like, Yahuwah says he stores up the storehouses of hail. Like, he uses hail as a weapon. Like, he literally says it. Like, they go into the land, man. He literally rains down a talent, y'all. I don't have a talent here. 78 pounds to 100 pounds, like a millstone. He drops rocks out of the skies that weigh 100 pounds. He's going to do it again. But like, he's going to bring the millstones down on all the perverts' necks. Like, he's like, better y'all have a millstone tied around your neck and you be cast into the sea than you cause one of my children to stumble. Y'all, he's going to rain millstones out of the sky again to kill all of these people. Like, it's not a joke. Like, he stores this stuff up, which means that hail and how it's actually formed and where it really comes from is not the version of it that they're giving us out of our science textbooks. You know what I'm saying? Because it says he's got storehouses of the frost. He's got storehouses of the wind. Like, he has all of these places, these treasuries where he keeps this stuff, which means that he can open it up and let it come down in a very precise and calculated way that does not make sense to that model of weather, And so, to me, the trying to uncover what is actually going on out there, what is taking place out there, it breeds again that curiosity that is so beautiful that we should never lose sight of. That, you know what, this world is so much more massive and complex and beautiful. This creation that he gave us was meant for us to spread out and fill out. Like, we were not meant to be consolidated to where 80 to 90% of our population was stuck inside of a city. When you live in a city, you really do think the whole world is already done, that you feel that trapped and that oppressive feeling. But when you start to travel, you realize how massive the world is, how massive the world is, how many people are out there, how many cultures are. Like I drove through Kansas so many times. When I lived in Colorado, I would take Interstate 70. When I would go west or east, I would take Interstate 70 and drive through Kansas all the time. And I used to think it was the most boring 400 miles of my life every time. And you know what? Those 400 miles felt like a nightmare of time compared to 400 miles that I would drive in other places. I was like, something is not right here. Every time I drove through certain parts of this country, I was like, the distances that I'm driving do not match my experience of the time. Like when I drove in Texas, man, the vastness of that land was inexpressible until you try to literally drive in Texas. They don't care if you're going 90 on the interstates there, y'all. They're like, we get it, y'all. It's 3 hours to go anywhere. You know what I'm saying? And like, just because you can cross it in 12 hours, like the distances to make these journeys are unbelievable, let alone when you go up to the north in like Montana and the Dakotas. And like, it is so massive. And when you just get on Google Maps and you look at the United States map and you think you get an understanding of the scale of our country, you're completely out of your mind, let alone when you go to Canada or Alaska. Like there's such a disproportionate view of what our world really looks like. And there's clearly people that have an agenda in order to make us feel a certain way when we look at our maps. You know, that yes, we already know these things. But I started taking highways. One of my buddies gave me advice and he said, when you travel, instead of taking the interstates, take the state highways. Just take the state highways and you'll see a society, a culture, a world, and a creation that is so much different. And we started doing that in Kansas, and we started going off onto the different highways, and we started discovering these massive fossil beds and these chalk beds and these incredible formations and canyons and valleys and beautiful trees and creeks and lakes. And we're like, what the heck? Kansas has this incredibly complex, beautiful side to it that I never saw before because I was brainwashed by the interstate system. Just the limitation of roads has insulated us from the expanse of our creation just by saying public road, paved road, private road, gravel road, dirt road. Like just by controlling, you can control so much of the populace by just giving them a resistance factor that increases on their travel. And like when, like I come from Colorado and Arizona, and predominantly I lived almost all my life above 6,000 feet. Like I saw so much different aspects of this country that I didn't even realize. Like I explored on a White Mountain Apache reservation for years of my life. Like that was my normal backyard experience and growing up. And I saw the massive experience of what it was like to go exploring and hiking in the high alpine desert, in high mountain deserts, you know? So like my perspective on a lot of the world came from going off these beaten trails and wandering where it says no trespassing. Like I always used to tell my wife, the more the signs say like restricted area, no trespassing, don't enter here, I'm like, the more scary the signs are, the ever decreasing amount of actual security there's going to be, because most people are so conditioned to follow those signs. And like I used to take her into Las Vegas, I would take her into like strip malls and I would take her into the back rooms of places, take her back into the tunnels and into the like the hallways and stuff like that employees uses. And I'm like, well, I want to teach you how other people get around, because there's a whole other world that operates behind the scenes here. And if you learn to navigate that, and I did that in Las Vegas with her, and I was like, listen, let me show you that and test it out. And it was like, it opened her mind to see that if you don't follow the paths that they're trying to force everyone into, you can see there is an entirely different world out there. And so much of my passion is to try to inspire people to get out and explore, but the areas that you're not being shown you should go.
Yeah, definitely. Brother, I definitely understand what you're saying, because when I was able to go cross country, it was amazing. When for work, I actually went all the way to California, and I went all the way to Spokane, Washington, and all the way down into Louisville, Texas, and then also I went all the way to Connecticut. So I kind of been kind of the four corners. I've never been to Florida. I honestly don't want to go there. I just feel like it's going to fall off the map one day.
But it's okay, bro. It's a giant sandbar. It's kind of intimidating.
But
it's beautiful though. The fountains of the deep come up there. I'm telling you, it's unbelievable. You can swim in the fountains of the deep there. I've shoved my face inside them and drank from them. Yeah, dude. I just want to thank you so much for doing this, Zach. This was awesome, bro. I really appreciated it.
This was awesome for me as well. You know, I've been watching you for years, and this is amazing. You know, actually getting to face to talk to you and on your show. You know, I'm very humbled, and thank you.
Thank you, Zach, so much, man. And I pray you just keep going out there, man, and ferociously contending for the souls of men. You're doing a fantastic job, bro. Keep it up.
Thank you, brother. As you as well.
Right on, man. You have a great night.
All right, you too.